Good morning. Good to see you all here. Today I guess we'll share our story of how we're here, how we are here. And I hope through it that God can be praised and glorified. I don't look at it as a great story, but it's my life. So I'll start. I was born in a Mennonite family, very conservative Mennonite family. I was born here in Winchester at the hospital, so very local here. My parents, we lived in Belvedere till I was 7 years old. I was the oldest of four boys in my family. And anyway, I was 7. Dad, the church there here in Belvedere had some issues, and he didn't agree with him and Mom didn't agree with a lot of stuff. So we moved to Kentucky. And in Franklin area of Kentucky, which is it's only about 2.5 hours from here, so it's not that far. But we left. I had an aunt and uncle that lived up there, the Bylers. Some of y'all know them. They lived up there at that time, and that's what drew us up there. There were a couple churches up there. Mom and Dad joined another church there, similar to one here, but thought they had less problems, I guess, to put it that way. So I went to school there. I was about 11 years old, and there was a split there was 3 churches like that, and then out of those 3, there was a lot of people moved out of those and went to start a little more liberal church. And the Mennonites, if you're not familiar with Mennonites, some of them have a lot of rules, and then the more liberal you get, they might have less rules that they would say to follow, if I'm making sense. So this church, we left the very conservative church. It was called the Beachy Church, is what they call that. And we left that. There was things with school. Mom wanted to homeschool us, but they wouldn't allow that. They did not want to let that. They wanted us to go to school. And there was problems in the school, and it didn't work out. So Mom and Dad, we left. At 11, went to this other church. They were a little bit more looser. Anyway, about 13 or 14, I think it was 13, one day I was reading a Bible story, and it was about Jesus, how he died on the cross, how he died for our sins, and I realized I needed a Savior. And so I gave my heart to the Lord at that time. But when I was 14, in a Mennonite church, they put you through classes to teach you everything that they believe and how they believe, and you take those classes, and then you're baptized. So I was baptized at 14. I think it was in October or something like that. Of course, baptism there, you dress up in a suit coat and you look the part, as you can know, and they sprinkle water on you. Is how they did it and how they did me, and you're part of the church. And I'm going to stop there, and I'll let Liz continue on. I think her story is better than mine, to be honest with you.
You can share my story. Okay, so I was born into an Amish family. I think it was Lodi, Ohio, where my parents lived at the time. So when I was 3, my family moved to Tennessee. And I'm not quite sure what all to share. But yeah, we lived there for around 12, 14 years, I think. And the Amish had rules where you could not charge more. I think the men were not supposed to charge more than $10 an hour at that time. But there was one family that was making more than that, and because of that, he got Sean put out of the church. And if you didn't agree with it, you got put out too. And my parents could not agree with that, and most of my siblings too. So we got kicked out also because we didn't agree to that, which it was like glory, hallelujah to me. I was about 18 at that time. So there was a New Order Amish church about 2 hours from us if you drove with a horse and buggy. We drove that for around a year, and at the time that we left the Schwarzentrooper Amish. And at one point, my one sister that got a car, and we got tired of driving them 2 hours with a horse and buggy, and we couldn't understand. Also, the New Order Amish, they would allow you to go as a driver during the week, but Sundays they get the horse and buggy out, and it just didn't make sense. We started questioning, why is the devil in the steering wheel? And so my sister that got a car, we started letting her drive us to that New Order Amish church, and they didn't appreciate that. So we were like, okay, maybe this is not for us. And we started searching for different things or for something else. And then we found a Mennonite church in Alabama, and that was about an hour and a half, 2 hours from us too. So we drove that for a while. And during this time, this whole year, Mom and Dad had put the property on the market, and it just didn't sell. If it would have sold, we would have moved to the New Order Amish church, and we were like, that had got to be God, because it didn't happen. It was not for us. Soon after we started going to Alabama to that Mennonite church, our Mom and Dad's place sold. And then we moved down there, and we were down there for about, I think it was close to 5 years. So I had a sister from Alabama also that moved to Pennsylvania, and my parents moved up there too, which another sister of mine and I decided to move with my married sister. So my parents moved up too, and that was, I want to say, probably 13 years ago, something like that. And that was a charity church. I don't know if most of you are familiar with a charity church or not. And they really had it going at that time as far as spiritual things, and we really fell in love with it, and we thought we can live there. So I skipped over some, didn't I? Okay, I'm going to back up a little bit. At the time that we left the Schwarzentrooper Amish and we were going to the New Order Amish church, we had a guy that, through a neighbor of ours, he came and held Bible studies with us. And during that time, I had the urge to give my life to God. I just knew that I had to, but he kind of taught that through the baptism is what saves you. And I struggled with that for a long time, for years. But I came to a realization that I did give my life to God, but I realized it was not the water that saved me. It was at that time that I gave my life to God. And it was through the fruit of my own life that I evaluated, and I was like, I must have been born again at that time. But I had, to be honest, I had struggled for many, many years that, am I really a Christian? Am I really born again? And what Steve shared last Sunday really was like, I really appreciated that. But I'm going to hand it to you now.
Okay. So, where I was 14, like I said, starting at my 14 years old, I was baptized, and then, so it was 16, you're in the Mennonite church there. I was 16 was the youth age. So I joined the youth at 16, and then right in that same time, about the same time that I joined, the church went through a split. And majority of the ones that had started that church left. And they left because they were wanting more spirituality in the church, and the church had started going backwards as far as going towards holding rules instead of letting the Spirit have its course. And they went to what they call a BMA church. They left and went to a BMA church. And I struggled with that because I had friends that left. And my mom and dad, they thought it'd be better to stay back with the stricter, the little more liberal, the a little bit more conservative bunch. So we did. So anyway, I was 16, had a job. I did masonry work, helped a mason, and was in the youth leader position. Had 17, I did a mission trip to Costa Rica and Nicaragua. Went down there for a little bit, for 2 weeks, and so I thought life was good. But at that point in time, I'd started slacking off on reading the Bible, a few things like that, just living life as a teenager. And that went on. I knew God loved me, but I wasn't serious about God at that point in time. And then I was at 19. I went to my aunt and uncle the church they were at. They had a church camp, and they invited us over. So we were there for a weekend, and Saturday night, one of their leaders, he preached a message on heaven and hell. Where you headed? And he preached a very powerful message, and it hit me hard. And so I recommitted my life to Christ that time. Then things started opening up as far as the church there. Started reading my Bible more and started wondering about rules. I just didn't quite agree with all the rules they had. And they started coming after me for things, different little things that, in my opinion, wasn't in the rule book, but they didn't hold them up to all of a sudden they were starting to hold this rule book up. And I said, no, I'm done with it. And so I left. I told Mom, Dad, and I told my Mom, Dad, I'm leaving. I'm going to leave that church. I'm going to go to the BMA church. And so I did. I left and went there, and I think they followed. Mom and Dad followed a couple months later. Dad didn't agree with it either. He seen what was going on, and the ministry was they were just starting to get to be that powerful. Some of y'all probably, the Mennonites, the ministry it's all about the ministry. Whatever the ministry tells you to do, you do. You don't buck it. If you do, you might get told where to go, or you're told to leave. It can get pretty coarse. So I left. I was surprised they didn't excommunicate me or nothing. I left that group, went to join the other group. We were there for a couple years. Let me see, it was like 19, I was 20. So by 22, and I had changed jobs through that time. It was 2008, 2009. Housing market had dropped off. My masonry job was not very reliable at that point in time. There were houses being built, but it was hard to keep work. A lot of Mexican crews come in and took over, and so it was just hard. It was a little harder to keep busy. So there was the pastor that was pastoring his other church. He had a farm, and he offered me work, and so I went to work for him. And so I did that, and then I had family, and I'll back up. I had family here in Belvedere. My dad's brother lives down here. My aunt and uncle that moved to Kentucky to Byler's, they had moved back. So we were kind of the only family up there as far as in Mom and Dad's circle. Mom's parents lived in Florida part-time. They lived up here part-time. She had her brother that lived in Belvedere. So it was kind of, we'd come back down, and there was a point in time I wanted to move back. I don't know why I had a desire to move back down. So that would have been 2012. I had opportunity to come back. A job opened up for me, so I moved down, moved to my uncle's place. Moved in, and then Mom and Dad, they decided to move back down. We decided there's nothing holding us in Kentucky anymore, so we moved back. Got a house in Huntland, lived there, and that's when the church here, is a BMA church, started. Right soon after actually it had started before we moved down, but they had not been BMA or anything like that. They were just meeting and needed leadership, and we came down. They wondered what kind of church we went to, and we told them, and they're like, they wondered if they would help us. So we said, yeah, we can. We knew the one leader, so we did, and he came down, and he helped us, and that's where they're at now, the BMA church there, Crossroads. So we So I moved down here now. I think it's your turn.
So, like I was saying, we left the Amish, went to the Newer Amish church, and then the Mennonites, and then the Jaredists. And then my brother and his family got kicked out of the Mennonite church. So, was them getting kicked out here in Belvedere, they also the children got kicked out of school. So, they were looking for somebody to teach them. This was after I lived in Pennsylvania for 2 years. So I came down to teach them because they asked me, wondered if I would be interested in it. And from there, we went to Woodbury Church for a while. I forget how long it was. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with that church there. What kind of church? Is that like a charity type? I guess it was. But that was like an hour drive or so too, and my brother Levi got tired of that, so at that time Crossroads, what he was talking about, had started, so we went there. And I guess that's where we met. So I describe my steps from going from church to church as a staircase. Like where I was born in, was about as low as anybody can get. Was the source of true Amish. And then was the Newer Amish, I feel like I was able to grow spiritually. And I describe it as reaching a ceiling. You can't grow through the ceiling, with all the rules and stuff. And then the Mennonite church was more lenient. You could grow again there. In the charities, I felt like I could grow more. And where we're at now, I feel like there is no limit. There's no ceiling there. You can just continue to grow. And I will never forget how I felt when I just realized it was like moving from Alabama, from the Mennonites to the Jaredists. They didn't necessarily have rules, but yet you knew that you were not supposed to do some things. But then, because I didn't have a church over me telling me what I can do and what I cannot do, I felt like I was like a stiff board laying on the floor, and I just stood straight up. I'm not exactly sure what that meant, other than I have to look out for myself. I cannot have anybody else, nobody else is going to tell me that I cannot wear a certain dress or do certain things. I was responsible for my own life.
So, and I forgot to clarify, like the rules that I started, if they're more lenient. So I felt like, yeah, I can agree with this and move on. And so with the BMA church, they're a lot more lenient, not very coarse at all. So we met there. I met Liz. I remember seeing her first time, and I thought she was nice. In the Mennonites, you technically go to your mom and dad and talk to them about wanting to start a relationship. So I did. A year later, it was about a year, we had just moved in and everything, trying to get settled down. A year later, I talked to my mom and dad one evening. I said, I had to start a relationship with her. And they said they want to pray about it. I said, okay. So I left it. And about 2 months later, I got an opportunity. Didn't hear nothing from them. They didn't come back, say anything. So about a month later, it was right close. I had an opportunity. Opportunity came up for me to go to Texas for a corn harvest. So I was pretty interested in that. I was like, yeah, I'd like to go. But I wanted to talk to her before I left, but I didn't get a chance to. I was shy. I was very shy. I wasn't quite sure how to start it out. But I went to corn harvest. We were there for 2.5 months, 3 months, something like that. Came back. And in the meantime, I was working for Mountain View Construction at the time. So I came back, started working for them again, and in January of 2014, we were building their truss shop, and we had a bad accident. Had half the trusses set. They were 20 feet tall, 90 feet wide. I'm not sure how big that building is, but half the trusses set that day. and it was muddy. And all of a sudden, the wind came through, and we had release from the last truss. The boss had let the lift down on the last truss, and the wind came, and it blew them all down. I was on the ground trying to get away from them. I looked up, and I was like, it's over with. And one hit me and come down on my shoulder, and I ended up laying down beside some sawhorses that had lumber across it. And that kept from the truss keep coming on down to on my head. So we can see that God was working in that. And so they got me out of there and took me to the hospital here in Winchester. And they said, "Oh, you just got a sore shoulder from where the truss came down and hit you on your shoulder." They sent me home with a sling. Said, "You'll be okay. Just give it a couple days." So they took x-rays and everything. Well, the next morning, the doctor called and said, "No, you got a fractured shoulder." I said, "Okay," but they can't see me till in a week. I said, "Okay." So, and my injury was not bad. There was another guy that got injured that forget what all it did to his vertebrae. So it was a pretty big thing. It was a pretty big mess. So anyway, we get through that, and of course I'm laid off, or not laid off. I'm laid up from work. Then I still was talking with her when I could and all. Then I heard that she decided to go to Arkansas. She was fixing to go to Arkansas. And I was like, I'm not going to let that happen. So I finally got the gumption to ask her one night if she would go out with me. And she said yes. I was actually at therapy. Asked her one night, told her to think about it. And I was doing physical therapy at the time. And she texted me the next day, it was in the evening or afternoon. She said, "Yeah, she'll go out with me." And I remember feeling nervous and whatnot, a lot of feelings going through me at that point in time. So I'll let you take on from there.
Yeah, I had an urgency to go do a term of service at the Hillcrest Nursing Home there in Arkansas. And I think I was only going to go for 6 months, but Wes kept it very well hidden that he likes me. I had no idea. And yeah, he was very shy. And I remember thinking, I was like, man, I wish I could be a fly and sit in the wall when he asked a girl out, just because I knew how nervous he got or how shy he was. And lo and behold, I was the one that he asked. And I will never forget the look on his face when he found out that I'm going to Arkansas. I was like, what is that look all about? I mean, I at that point, I had no idea that he liked me. He did a really good job at keeping it to himself. So I did go out to Hillcrest, and it was quite a journey. I mean, I'm really glad I went. I do never regret that, but it was really hard because we had just started dating, and he proposed to me while I was out there and everything. By the time I came back, I came back, I think, 1st of November, and by December 19th, we got married. So, if y'all can imagine, my heart was here in Tennessee a lot of the time. But it was really good to be there, too.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was moving pretty fast. So it was 9 months that we courted, and then we were married. So it wasn't very long. So we got married, and then 2015, we were trying to figure life out together. We're going to the BMA church there, and the church seemed to be growing, and it seemed like things were going good. Then Andrew was born. He was born in November of that year. So we go into 2016. I was working, and that time I was working at the barn shop here in Belvedere. And I had quit Mountain View. They had offered a better job, and so I went. I remember Delbert hauling buildings out of that barn shop. I remember seeing him there, I don't know quite every day, but I remember seeing him and Preston. They would pull out of that barn shop. And yeah, I was one of the builders there. So 2016, we had tried to buy our first house, trying to get that done. We were renting at the time, and nothing worked. We tried, and the bank said they wanted a year or two more, at least a year more. And then we had talked about spiritual lives. We were trying to keep that afire and trying to keep, growing more in the Lord. And the 2016, it was in the fall. I don't know how many of y'all know how you become a preacher in the Mennonite church. Some of you probably do. Silas, I don't know, you probably do. They take a lot. Basically, all the members get together one night and you vote. And you vote for a person or a man that you think would be qualified for leadership. So you vote, and then you let it at that, and then they'll tally up the votes, and most times you have to have a certain percentage. Anyway, it's a complicated deal, but they vote, and whoever got the most votes, they'll put what they call in a lot. And what you do then is so if there's two in a lot, you don't really know which one, so they'll put a paper in a book, and they'll have a meeting one night, and you'll sit there with two books on the stand, and whichever book got the paper in, you're the preacher, you're the minister. So I was put in that position at that fall. It was me and another man. We're in the lot together. And I remember I felt like I was young. Didn't feel like I was quite qualified to be there, but I was there. So we went through the lot. I wasn't chosen, the other guy, and we went on. In the meantime, so that happened. 2017, we went through with that. That was a big thing in our life, and 2017, we bought our first home in Huntland, and we closed, and then a month later, Connor was born, and wasn't very long. So in 2018, in the Crossroads Church there, the BMA church we were at, we decided we're going to play softball that year, and I remember we would go out to these softball games. We'd meet Lighthouse, which is the old church that was here. We'd meet Lighthouse out there. We played with Delbert and James's bunch too, I think, Faith. Quite a few churches around that we played with. But I remember my wife and I were talking about maybe we should leave the Mennonites. Maybe this is not, it's time maybe to move on. We met them there, and we could tell they had a spark in their eye. They loved the Lord, something about them. The Lighthouse really reached our hearts, and we were like, we'd love to go visit sometime. But in the meantime, before that season got over with, the main leader of the group fell in some very, very dark sin, and they've had to put him out, or not put him out, but he had to step aside. Well, in the doing of that, the one that was ordained when I was in the lot with, he ended up taking it on, but he needed help. And so one night we had a meeting, and they did votes, and it was Willard Helmuth. I don't know if y'all would know him. Him and I were chosen to be the elders to help him. So I put that whole thing about even coming to Lighthouse, all that, I put aside. Okay, we got work to do. So now I'm helping there, and there was, I think the next year, 2019 came along in the spring, and there was some that were getting very disgruntled and not happy, and I had to work with them in the group. I was trying to keep the group together. And then then I had a job opportunity came up to move on a poultry farm. A guy needed a manager, So I said, yeah, I'll look into it. We looked into it, and we moved there in October of 2019. So I started that. Was still elder there at Crossroads, and then we were there, and of course, through the time that 2020 hit, right before the pandemic, that whole deal, the elder and the leader decided to step down. About the same time as what I was thinking about stepping down. And we were actually, her and I were talking. We're like, I think it's time to step down and to move on. And I was actually we were going to have a meeting. I was going to actually talk to them about it. But before we could even get to that, they texted me to tell me they're both stepping down. So it put me in a position. I said, oh, well, all right, I won't leave. So I was the only leader for a little bit there. And I was wasn't sure. I wanted help, but the church at that point was very shy at giving help because they felt like the leadership had kind of abused their authority. And so they were very much, well, we can help you. You just lead us and we can help you. And I said, that's okay, but I really do need help. I really need a brother or somebody that can be put in eldership there to help me. Well, of course, the pandemic hit. We didn't have church. We did in the evenings. We kind of split up, had our groups or whatever. And then finally in October, it was August. I think it was August or July. I finally called the leader, he was the overseer of the church there. He was in contact with me. Him and I were back and forth. I told him, I said, look, we had talked about we are ready. We are ready to step down. We're ready to leave. We feel like we need to leave. It's not, the church wasn't growing. The church was very, stagnant, to put it. We were ready to leave. I was burned out, to say the least. So he said, all right, he'll come down, he'll help us. So he did. He came, he's from South Carolina. He came and we put 3 men in, and I left. So we weren't sure where we were going to go. We said we're leaving, but we're not sure where we're going to go, what we're going to do. We had said we would go and we would visit churches around. So I think we went twice to Faith. I think we showed up there a couple times, and then we decided we're going to come and visit Lighthouse, and so we did. And to be honest, we got stuck. We came in. I remember John Miller was here, Steve was here, made us feel very welcome, and that's where we were at. So we basically planted ourselves right here in the church. Like I said, the church before what is here now. So onto the farm, we were there, and then the man that had the farm, he had promised me, he had given me a 5-year contract, said it was for 5 years. I'll sign you this contract. We'll move a new house for you. But you got to promise 5 years. I said, oh, that's fine. I can promise 5 years. In the meantime, I'd sold my house in Huntland. And of course, 2020, you know how everything went crazy. And I actually sold it in the first part of 2020 when people weren't sure what the economy was going to do. So I lost some money on that house, but that's okay. I sold it, still did okay. We sold that, and we were there. We said, we'll do that. Anyway, so in 2021, we moved in that new house in last part of 2020. And then we got in the new house, and we were getting settled in, and didn't realize that the boss never called me, but that fall, he had put it on the market, the whole farm. He didn't call me until he had it under contract. And he calls me and tells me there's 2 guys wanting to buy the farm. And I said, wait a minute, we had a contract. Yeah, but I can make money off of this deal, and I want to do it. I said, okay. He said, I'm hoping it'd be, and what his idea was with this farm, it was like an investment deal for him, basically. He lives in Indiana, and still does, as far as I know, but he owns these farms down here, and that it was just an investment deal, is basically all it was. So he bought 2 new farms that year in McMinnville area, and he decided to sell the one that I was on. And I'm gonna be honest with you, that irritated me a lot. I had a little hard time working through that. But so 2022, we're now, the 2 guys that are buying, it's looking like it's going to go through. He didn't think it would, because he had asked quite a bit of money for the place, and they actually gave it to him. So 2022 comes along, housing market's crazy. Now we have to try to find us a place to live. And I thought, surely, I have I'd have had 4 more years at that point in time, so I wasn't too worried about it. I was thinking, we'll be okay. Then when I'm closer to my 5 years, I'll buy a place. Is kind of what I had in the back of my mind. So they decided to close in May. They said their closing date looks like it'll be 1st of May. We were out looking for places to buy. Went to John Miller, the realtor that was here. He helped us. We looked, and it seemed like every time you would go and look, you'd have to basically say you're going to buy it or not. I mean, it was no time of thinking. So we went to an auction, looked at some land, and I actually bid it on a piece of land, thought I had it, and the auctioneer didn't shut up, and it went on, and next thing you know, somebody jumped on it and took off, and it went way more than what I wanted to give. I thought I had it for a little bit, and I was just like, what we're going to do? And I really didn't want to rent, but I said, well, if nothing else, we can. Then this little place come up for sale where we're at now, and I seen it a couple days before it came up, and we told John, as soon as it's available, I want to go look at it. So we did, and there was another thing, God just showing up. I called my banker, and I told him, I said, I need a letter of intent, or a letter of I forget, it's not intent, they got a different name for it, but it's a letter saying that, that you can get the money. And so I want to wait till next week. This is Friday afternoon. I said, no, I ain't got next week. I need that letter now. Well, I can't do it. I said, okay. So John knew of a banker. He's like, if you got 20% down, I know he'll give you the money. So I told him I had to clarify some things, and he's like, yeah. He's like, I'll have it to you in an hour. Sure enough, in my email, there was a letter of approval that I could buy this place. So we sent that in that night. They accepted our offer. And so that was a God thing for us. Coming to a job, I was a little nervous about finding another job, and the guy that I worked for at the barn shop, he actually offered me one. I said, no, I'm not sure. I'll do it. But then Preston came along and offered me a job. He said, help me get my CDL. He would help me. So I said, yeah, okay, I think I'd love to do that. So that's when I went to work for him. And we pulled through, of course, right in the middle of this. We had just moved, we had just closed on the place. We were fixing to move. The church splits here. That was another tough one. It was hard. I remember, I think we shared it at the last meeting, members meeting that we had, but the church splits here. We were buying a place just 5 minutes from here, and I was like, what is going on? It was hard. We went to Gateway a few times, but we didn't feel at home there. Enjoyed the people there, great people. We didn't seem that was the place to be. And I remember we came back to this group. We had gone to the other group that had left. They invited us. We went there one Sunday, but I did not feel. I didn't think it was right the way that all went on. But anyway, so yeah, that was in 2022. So I worked for Preston, went on through that, and things had its highs and lows for us. I don't know.
So you started working for Mountain View and then for Steve. So I'm going to back up a little bit. When we were at the softball games, Lighthouse, they had something that was like a light to me. I mean, I was just like, they got something that I want. And when I was in Pennsylvania, I did have a closer walk with God at that time than I did during the time that I lived down here, and we got married and went to the BMA church. Over the years, I'd say 3-4 years or so, I kept telling him, there is more to be had. I felt like I was just ho-hum-drum going through life with my spiritual life. And I was like, there is more, because I experienced it. And I knew that I was lukewarm at that time, and it bothered me. I was convicted about it a couple of times, and then when I saw the people at Lighthouse, there was something there that drew me. And I kept telling him, I would love to go visit Lighthouse sometime. This happened. I mentioned that a couple of times over the years. And then when we left the Mennonites there, that was one of the places, I'd say probably the second Sunday after we left, that we went to, and we were stuck. It was like we didn't visit anywhere else. So, do you want to share more before I talk about my parents?
So yeah, I mean, and the whole thing with so it drew me out of when I left the Mennonites and all the rules, to realize that my faith is not on that my faith is not on any of that. It's on Jesus. And like Steve shared the gospel last week, a very simple gospel. And that is what I wanted. I didn't want anything else added to the Bible. And that is my goal. That's my heart this morning even. And that's what I love about the group here now. And so yeah, I mean, 2022, and then we got 23, and then River was born last year. And we were stuck. We had a pretty stuck routine at home. It's just us and our 2 boys. And she comes along and she brings spice to our life. She definitely has made me mature more. So, but yeah, and that, I say that, this morning as I share this, I just want to, my heart this morning is to know the Lord. And rules and things, you can't do anything to be saved. It's only through God's grace. And that He is showing me that more and more. And I would say back when I was in my teenage years, I knew you had to be born again, but at the same time, I was like, I'm good with the church, hold the standard, whatever. Realizing that's not what it's about at all. So I thank God for that recognition. And Liz, she helped me realize some things like that. She was a very sweet person. I remember she always had a smile on her face before we were dating. Talked to her, she always smiling and seemed like a very lovable person, and she is. She's very lovable. Has to live with me.
I was going to say I was or I am.
So yeah, that's our story as a whole. As many of y'all know, her parents are coming down in 2 weeks. So that is also another story in itself. So her mom and dad are not, they are 82? Dad is 82 and mom is 78 or 9. Anyway, so they're in Pennsylvania. And we have had battles with this, the children are up there, but the one has moved off like 2 hours away from there, and the other, she has her hands full with her family. So there were times we've talked about, should we move up there to help take care of them? And I don't know if any one of you have ever been through Lancaster, but I don't want to live there. It's such a busy place. it's nice to maybe go see it, but that's it. I don't think I could live there. And so we've always, like, what should we do? I said, nothing else. I'll go up there and live there. We'll help take care of them, but then I want to come back. So knowing that the church has this little house down here, I started thinking about it. I was like, I wonder. But this was going on for a little bit. I didn't share it to anybody, and I was like, well, no, I don't think that'd work out. And then the landlord they're renting from, he wants his house. He wants to move into that house that they're in June. And that's when things started rolling. And I knew about it last year, but I was like, no, we'll find a place up there for them. I'm sure we'll find something. But nothing has come around. And then that was about a month and a half ago, I said, well, I wonder if this house is available. I don't know. I know Micah was living in there, and I didn't know what would take on with that. And lo and behold, here we are. So now we're trying to get that house fixed up. That's what we're working on now. And they're moving down, Lord willing, tomorrow in 2 weeks we'll leave from PA. And we're going to be coming down, hopefully by Tuesday night, we'll be here with them. So if y'all would pray for us for that, that'll be a journey in itself, I believe, because we're going up Thursday. One of her sisters getting married that Saturday. And then Sunday and Monday morning we'll head back. And that's all I have to share. I don't know.
So I had the desire to take care of Mom and Dad, which is why we brought the conversation up, should we go up and help. I feel like Mom and Dad had a really hard life, especially Mom. She had 13 children, and for me to have 3, she had 10 more than I had. And I'm like, man, how in the world did she ever do it? Especially being Amish and not having air conditioners and everything. I'm like, if anybody deserves heaven, Mom does. And I think through that, it gives me a desire to just take care of them and give her anything I can to make her comfortable. I mean, they're not going to be here with us forever. And I have a desire to give her anything I can to make her comfortable. And Dad, of course, too. But I feel like Mom went through more than he did because, I mean, she gave birth to all them children. And plus watch us fight and try to settle us down and everything. So through that, I see God moving, opening doors that is just unbelievable. With them coming down here, things falling in place. It's like I describe it as a puzzle coming together. And I just want to give God glory and praise Him for that. So I know there's going to be challenges ahead. And like I said, they have had a really hard life. I feel like this might sound kind of harsh, but I feel like my family was the scum of the earth back when we were Amish, among that group. So my desire is that if y'all can't just love on them and make them feel welcome, that would be very awesome. So I think that's all I have.
I think that's all I have.